And today, me goosey ganders, we're reviewing Lock, Stock, the Old Lot. The following review has been emotional. Welcome back to my channel, viewers, subscribers, and you lucky people. Today we're going to be looking at British crime caper Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels as requested by George101. Check out his Instagram in the description below. And now let's talk about the film and, of course, and as always, an action figure line to accompany this lovely movie. Is this review? Near Kathmandu, meet me halfway, mate. And I hope you enjoyed a few little clips there of myself as characters from the film. Many thanks to the Reface app for being able to do that. So Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels opens with two of the main characters, Eddie and Bacon, doing a bit of unsavoury trading on the streets of East End London before they're soon chased off by the police. And in this opening we see that the two of the main characters, Eddie and Bacon, it's basically have come to the decision they need to make a career change because it's not really working out for them. We then see Eddie, who we saw previously with Bacon, meeting with the next main character known as Tom, who's the entrepreneur, who's also having a little meeting with Nick the Greek. Tom at this point is shown to be lending Eddie 25 grand, and then we see the last of the four friends called Soap, who's a chef, who's also lending Eddie the 25 grand. So this introduces us to all four of our main characters, Eddie, Bacon, Tom and Soap. Each of them have lent Eddie 25 grand to enter a late night high stakes poker game with underworld crime boss and pawn king Harry Hatchet, and of course Harry Hatchet and his sort of main handyman or main henchman Barry the Baptist kind of have plans to make the card game go their way. And this basically sets up the main story for us. So the four friends are preparing the cash for the card game at Eddie's home, and while they're there they're just having a general discussion about the living quarters, which leads to Bacon telling Tom about the unsavoury neighbours who will become more important later in the story. And what's nice about Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels is, as well as having main cast, we have plenty of supporting characters. And from here we're introduced to groups of supporting characters, including the public schoolboys who are making copious amounts of cannabis and have regular dealings with Eddie and Bacon's next door neighbour, namely Plank, who's a member of a group of criminals led by notorious leader Dog. And we're also introduced to Big Chris and his son, who collect debts for Hatchet Harry. We're also introduced to two Scouse or Liverpudlian small-time robbers who Barry the Baptist hires on behalf of Hatchet Harry to steal two antique guns from a stately home, which Hatchet Harry can then use to his own ends. So the card game between Hatchet Harry and Eddie begins. And secretly, Hatchet Harry is interested in taking over JD's bar. Now, JD is the father of Eddie, played by Sting, the musician. And so, yeah, Hatchet Harry and Barry the Baptist have sort of rigged the game, shall we say, in their favour, with plans for that being the sort of, you know, the prize. And whilst the card game is happening, Bacon, Tom and Soap are waiting next door in a pub. And this is where we're first introduced to Rory Breaker, who happens to be the business partner of the public schoolboys. So, of course, as Hatchet Harry and Barry the Baptist have rigged the game, Eddie loses the card game to Hatchet Harry. And Hatchet Harry demands that Eddie and his other friends, Soap and Tom and Bacon, all pay $500,000 or $500,000 within a week. And if not, Barry the Baptist will take a finger from each of their hands and their toes as well, for every day they can't pay. And also JD's bar, Eddie's dad, as compensation. So Eddie, Bacon, Tom and Soap are all trying to come up with a solution on how to pay. And by sort of chance, Eddie overhears the neighbours, Plank and Dog and the gang, all planning to rob the public schoolboys and take all their cannabis and money. And so Eddie and his pals decide to rob them once they've done that. And then what they plan to do is, once they've done that, is to sell the cannabis they've stolen to Nick the Greek. And Tom needs to buy guns off Nick the Greek to actually do the robbery off Dog and Plank and the gang. So Basically, Nick the Greek has been sold the guns that Barry and Gary stole from the stately home. They sold them to him, and he gives them to Tom so that Tom can use them in the robbery with Eddie and his pals. So does that all make sense? So everything's basically coming together at this stage. So the two Liverpudlians who stole the stately home guns for Barry the Baptist ended up selling them to Nick the Greek. Nick the Greek offers the guns to Eddie and gang for the robbery. Eddie and gang carry out the robbery on Dog and Plank, and get the cannabis and the money to give to Nick the Greek, who can then sell the cannabis on to Rory Breaker. Yeah, now I appreciate this is quite complicated to describe, but the genius of Lock, Stock and Smoking Barrel is that it takes a complicated story like this and simplifies it, so that the viewer, when the viewer's watching it, it's very clear to understand and follow. So, as I mentioned before, now Nick the Greek has got a sample of this cannabis from the boys, from Eddie and his pals. It's actually Rory Breaker's own cannabis, because obviously Rory Breaker's the business partner of the public school boys, so they're the ones that have been making the cannabis that's been stolen. So Rory Breaker is sold back his own cannabis. Now he's not too happy with this, and obviously he sort of threatens Nick the Greek to find out where Eddie and the boys live, Eddie and Bacon live. So Rory Breaker and his men decide to pay them a little visit. What they don't count on, or what happens is, at the same time this is happening, Dog and Plank and his men are planning on paying Eddie and Bacon a visit as revenge for the robbery that occurred on them. So obviously what happens is Rory Breaker's men and Dog's men encounter one another, and the mother of all shootout occurs. Chris, as pictured in this lovely fan artwork here, is on scene to collect the debt and money. He runs into Dog, who has the antique guns which were at the boys' flat after they took place in the robbery, or did the robbery. The guns and money are taken to Hatchet Harry by Big Chris, but Gary and Barry eventually turn up to take the guns back, as they've been threatened by Barry the Baptist, and they're not realising that they're actually holding up their own employers. So I appreciate there's a hell of a lot to digest there, but that's the charm and genius of this movie. So there's so much that's happening with so many different characters, and it all comes well together at the end. And it's actually very simple for the viewer to follow, which is a great hallmark of good storytelling. So Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels gets 4.5 stars out of TAKTAK Toys With Film. And now, as always, let's talk an action figure line to accompany this great movie. There are so many larger-than-life characters in this film. Eddie, Bacon, Tom and Soap, all shown here. Nick the Greek, Big Chris, Rory Breaker and Hatchet Harry and Barry the Baptist would all make wonderful additions to an action figure line. Admittedly, they would look like a lot of people on an action figure shelf, but Guy Ritchie seems to have a hallmark of making everyday characters have larger-than-life personalities. So NECA, if you're watching, make this happen. So that's my review of Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. If you like this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. It all helps the channel. Thanks for fan art by the following: Fan Art TV, Pinterest, DT Rio, Pin on My Wands, Redbubble, Behance, Wolfgangs, Chung Kong, Nikita, Frankie Monty, Wallpapers Vista and Evan Yarborough. And I'll put all those names in the comments down below. Thanks for watching as always, and until next time, enjoy those flicks and figs.